Check, check. Mr. Mayor, we are live and ready to roll.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Then we will convene the Riverside City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 20th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown? Ms. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Gaby?
Here.
Mr. Maxfield?
Present.
Ms. Angel Patterson?
Present.
Ms. Frida Patterson?
Here.
Mayor Williams?
Here. Is there a motion to excuse our absent member?
Motion to excuse Mr. Brown.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Mr. Manager, any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right. do we have
Motion
a
to
mo-
approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Ms. Fry to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If you're able, please join us to rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've all had a chance to review the meeting minutes from our January 5th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes as published?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Frida Patterson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If there's any citizens wishing to speak tonight on agenda or non-agenda items, please make sure you fill out a form in the back and turn it into the clerk up front. We'll move on to public comment for agenda items, of which I believe we have two. So first, we'll ask Mr. Tim Gosnell to come to the podium.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, mine was non-agenda item, but I want to speak on the non-agenda part after you're done, if that's okay at the end.
Okay, I mean, you checked, I only said I should check the
that's
agenda.
me. My bad, I apologize. You can give me a demerit and take 15 seconds off my time.
Is that what one's a merit equals?
If you don't mind, I'm sorry.
No problem, I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
We don't want to deprive you of the right to speak. We'll have Mr. John Ziegler please come to the podium to speak on an agenda item. Mr. Ziegler, thanks for joining us tonight. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you for letting me allow to speak. My name is John Ziegler. My address is 4238 Blue Rock Road, Riverside, Ohio. Hi. 30 years ago, I came to Riverside, and we purchased our first property. And wasn't too long after that, I was a trustee at one of the churches, so I've been here for a while. And I always try to speak the truth. Sometimes the rules kind of change at planning and commission, so it makes it hard for us to stay on topic sometimes about history. But tonight I wanted to talk about some resolutions. So we're going to be deciding on resolutions, and I'm wondering, is it fair for us to be making decisions if we weren't able to have a proper charter review? And I wanted to know when the next charter review is going to be. I think it's 2 more years, I think maybe we got one coming up. And I would like to think that there should be some kind of penalty or something if they cannot get enough people to be involved with it or they don't try hard enough. I would like us to have a guaranteed charter review after, before the 5 years is up. From the last one we didn't have. But back to the resolutions, I was looking at this number 26R 3075, and it's about the sidewalks, I believe, on spending. I was worried about them spending $66,000 on that, engineering of that, and it looks like a pretty straightforward project. These are rectangle lots, and they are facing directly to Spinning Road. And I filled out the easy paperwork we have for residents to add onto their properties and build sidewalks. And I'm not sure how many properties it is involved over there. It doesn't look very many. I mean, almost like a novice engineer could do that in a weekend. So I was thinking maybe like 66,000 is a lot. And if they could save some money on that part, at least maybe, if they're going to buy the double doors easement to build a sidewalk by the double doors drive-through at the end of Linden Avenue, they could use some of that money to help move a catch basin that's in the driveway, and it kind of it's a problem for the project down there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other slips we had turned in were for non-agenda items. So we will move on to new business, of which we have a couple resolutions, 4 resolutions to be accurate. Mr. Manager, the first resolution, Resolution 26-R-3074.
This is an annual housekeeping resolution where we ask the county to give us advance payment of property taxes. It just helps our cash flow throughout the year.
And this is a typical request we make in January.
Yep, every year.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Ms. Angel Patterson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Resolution 26-R-3074 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And the next resolution, Mr. Manager, I think we were just talking about this.
Yes, this is 3075 is a resolution that lets us enter into an agreement with CMT for the spinning sidewalk project. This is what we previewed at the last meeting during discussion as far as us receiving a grant of about $350,000 from the state to complete the gap in the sidewalk there. The resolution has a not-to-exceed amount of $66,000. That's the amount ODOT is estimating will be necessary for the engineering piece of this. ODOT will pay for about half of those costs, so our actual out-of-pocket is closer to $33,000.
And this is $33,000 spent for $380,000 total project.
Correct.
I am actually not in favor of this resolution. I feel like until we have a cohesive plan to address the issues with our residential streets, these non-emergency side projects should be put on hold.
I was myself considering this project until this executive session popped up for legislation we're going to deal with towards the end of the meeting. And since it appears there may be some cost going out, I do not feel right now is the time to spend the $33,000.
I also do not support Resolution 26R 3075. Talking to the residents in the area, I went to BFW last Sunday on Spinning Road, talked to residents that live in that area, talked to people in Seville Platte, and they all feel, and the majority of them, that that money would be more wisely added to the marijuana money and go into a street fund than it would be to put it in a sidewalk.
Okay, so I think we should do a voice vote here to make sure that we capture any yeas or nays, unless anyone has an objection. So, did we have a motion and a second on this yet?
Haven't had that.
All right. Is there a motion?
Is there a way to table this for further discussion?
Well, let's ask.
Maxfield, you can make a motion to table to a date certain in consideration of this resolution, whether that be the next meeting or a date certain after that.
I'd like to make a motion to table this so we can have a little bit further discussion on this matter, please.
Okay. And,
If I may, I'd suggest the motion be styled as table it till perhaps February 2nd, and then it can continue to be tabled, but the tabling needs a specific date to be
Okay,
reconsidered.
table it to the February 2nd meeting.
okay, so we have a motion to table this resolution for consideration until February 2nd.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to table this until our next meeting in February. Is there any further discussion among members of council before we vote? All those in favor of tabling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right. Resolution 26R3075 is tabled. We'll move on to Resolution 26-R-3076, and this is for some of our vehicles, Mr. Manager.
Correct. We budgeted in the 2026 budget to replace battalion chief vehicles in the fire department this year. This resolution authorizes us to spend the money to purchase those vehicles.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussions among members of council? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Maxfield and a second from Ms. Fry. All those in favor of Resolution 26-R-3076 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And the final resolution, Mr. Manager, this is for road salt.
Correct. That's a very expensive item that we end up putting down on the roads quite frequently most years. So we did do a competitive bid process last year and selected the lowest and best bid from Cargill. We've not really had to draw, my understanding is we've not had to draw on that contract yet because we had enough supplies to get us to this point of the year. But we're at a point now where we need to buy salt on that contract. This resolution would allow us to do that. We will not be able to put any salt down if we don't have this.
Any further discussion among members of council? Is there a motion for Resolution 26-R-3077? Motion from Mr. Gaby
Second.
and a second from Ms. Angel Patterson. All those in favor of Resolution 26-R-377 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We'll move along to public comment for non-agenda items, of which we have 2 speakers left. And Mr. Dan Tieford, if you would come to the podium. Thank you for being with us this evening, and please state your
No problem.
name
Thank
and
you.
address
My
for the
name is
record.
Dan-
Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thanks again.
My name is Dan Tieford, 15 Beatrice Drive, Riverside, Ohio. I want to address a letter I got from the city of Riverside that put me on a censor conduct. I do not believe I deserve that. I'm accused of talking about people's life, religion, nationality, race, and residence. I've never talked bad about any resident. If I talked about the people who bought the property behind me, they are not residents of Riverside. If I talked about them and called them a Russian, that's because they are Russians. I'm an American. I don't take that as being offensive. Religion, I have never talked to religion about nobody. I think that's a very personal matter, and I would not ever condone anybody talking down about a religion. I have never done that. A protected class, I guess I need an explanation of what a protected class is. If it is the people who bought the property behind Beatrice Drive, tell me how they are a protected class. Evoking comments about nationality, again, I'm an American. You can call me an American anytime you want to. If they're Russian and they don't like it, that's not my problem. All I have done is spoke the truth about several issues that has come up over the last 6 months. Now, all the old board members signed off on this. The new board members, I showed you a copy of that when I got it, so you guys know what I'm talking about. But I want this resolved, and I want to be cleared of this censure as soon as possible. I don't want to make too much of it at this point, but if I don't hear something really quick from the council or Mr. Miller, then I'll take other steps. Thank you.
And next, we have Mr. Tim Gosnell.
Hello, my name is Tim Gosnell. I live at 12 Beatrice Drive in Riverside. You have started? Okay, thank you. Everybody knows what I want to talk about. I want to talk about stormwater fees. First time ever, shocked, I'm sure. Guys, I sent a note to each and every one of you, and I asked if, for an answer on whether the city manager, when he told me I couldn't be on the agenda, and when he refused to give me the stormwater tiers and fees, if that was approved by you all, and nobody bothered to answer me that. So I would like an answer on that. I guess I'm kind of confused about transparency, but yet I'm told I can't have the numbers, and, excuse me, based on the letter Mr. Ross sent me, it kind of sounded like I wasn't smart enough to take that information dissect it without getting myself in trouble. So I will say that if I get in trouble, that's on me. I'm a pretty big boy. I've been in trouble once or twice before, probably. So I just want to make sure that I gave you information that I found on the 2014 Stormwater review, and then I found out that, Mayor, you were part of that 2014 Stormwater review. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard. So I'm asking, were you part one of that review, board of the 2014 Stormwater review?
No, I don't, no.
Thank you.
Short
I
answer,
asked.
short answer is no.
I didn't accuse you, I asked. Okay, so that's what, so guys, I'm just trying to do the same thing. You know, that review, if you look at that 2014 review, it clearly states that we need about $500,000 a year over till 2041. We waited 10 years to put it in effect, so it'll be 2051 now. And then 173, I think, the 1,000 was how much we spent in 2013. So if you add salaries and move that up, you're looking at $800,000 or $900,000 a year could clearly take care of the stormwater problem that we have and work it out. But $2 million, guys, come on. I know you're going to talk part one I saw on the agenda tonight, and then hopefully you're going to vote, I think, in February. And I'm asking kind of, sort of. But again, I still haven't got the tiers yet, and how much money is in each tier, how many properties are in each tier. I haven't got the information on businesses, and I asked for that December 15th with Josh, December 19th with Miller, and I still have not gotten any of that information. So it doesn't appear like we're being very transparent. If we're agreeing that we're going to be transparent, we have to put it all on open and talk about it. It looks like all the transparency is on this side of the table. I'm allowed to have my opinion. And thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
If I may, I did actually reply to you.
You did, Frida.
I just want to
apologize.
clarify.
Frida did say.
Thank you.
Hey, I wasn't aware whether whether Josh's letter was cleared through the council or not,
Right.
but I don't see
Yeah,
a whole
that-
lot of meetings with, meet the council and talk about stuff. I see meet the mayor. And we're a council, we're 7 of you, not 1. So, that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Tim, where did you hear that I was a part of the 2014?
I just got it, you hear stuff, just Mary, I just saw.
Okay, I didn't know if there was like and here's his signature on this page or anything like that.
No. And
Okay.
that's why, sir, I ask, instead of saying, well, you've been on this since 2014, I asked about it.
I appreciate
To hear
that.
things, in my world, where I come from, I spent 40 years with Speedway, and I was used to asking questions instead of telling.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Okay. Well, now we have some discussion items.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a long list.
Only a couple.
Well, we have some really good, we have a lot of things we're going to get into tonight and hear from staff and hear from the city manager, so I'll let you get to it, Josh.
The first two are pretty straightforward. So new agency funds, the Shared Resource Center, so Mr. Hartlob, who could not be here this evening and sends his regrets. The Shared Resource Center, they're our finance director, Larry Hartlob. They are recommending that we actually establish 3 new funds in our accounting system. The reason for that is we have situations where we as a city have to take in money and hold it, but then give it back to people. We don't have the funds in our accounting system set up yet to do that properly in a way that would best satisfy the auditors. Let's put it that way. So one example of that is a credit memo fund, and that would be for situations where if we're doing utility billing and we have to issue credits back, but let's say we're trying to figure out where that person is, they've changed address, what have you, we need a place to hold that money until we figure out where it can properly go and get that money to the rightful owner. So a credit memo fund would serve that kind of a purpose. We would be able to put those monies in that fund for the right amount of time. If somebody claims it, then great. If not, it would go into unclaimed funds. Evidence is similar. We could stand to have a fund where we take money collected in conjunction with police investigative work. Right now, if we come across somebody's drug house and it's full of $100 bills inside a safe somewhere, and we take those $100 bills or whatever it is into evidence, it has to live inside a safe inside some facility here at City Hall. That's workable. It is not a best practice. The more cash we have on hand, regardless of how many safes it's around, it's just not a good idea to have that kind of cash in our facilities. An evidence fund would let us take that money to a bank, deposit the money in the bank, so the bank holds the money We then have no liability or much reduced liability because we aren't holding dollar bills in a safe anymore. It's much less likely to be targeted or to have some accounting error. It's easier to track the evidence if those dollars are at the bank. And then if a judge orders that evidence to be returned to somebody, we would cut the person a check and give the money back that way. Demo and development funds are also similar. So in our ordinances now, if you're going to demolish a property, we require a bond or basically a cash payment that we hold on to be sure that you demolish the structure properly. And if you don't, we'll cash that bond or we'll use that money to make sure that it comes down correctly. Similarly, if we're doing a development, we require development review fees that as a down payment or a deposit. We draw on those to do the engineering, traffic studies, et cetera, related to the work. It is possible that we won't use all of that money. If a project is really straightforward, we may have money left over out of that deposit that never got used. So we would need to credit that money back. All of these are situations where the city is taking in funds with the distinct possibility that we'll have to return them. The best practice is to create individual funds for each one of those purposes so that we can show a clear audit trail and that money was kept out of all the money that we use for day-to-day operations. So in order to get to that clarity, we would like to be able to set up 3 new funds. To do that requires an ordinance of council. So that is the reason we're going through this exercise today. We would have to bring you, or I intend to bring you, 3 separate ordinances, one that sets up each one of these funds. But think about it like opening a savings account at a bank. Basically, if council adopts these ordinances, we are allowed to create the funds inside our accounting system, and then we can better account for these monies when these situations arise. So to be very, very clear, creating the fund does not mean we're spending any money. There's no financial liability here. It just gives us a bucket to put these monies in so that we can pay them out properly when and if that should happen in the future. Any questions on that?
Are there any other procedural changes that would go along with adopting these new funds?
In terms of just how they're booked in the accounting system, yes. We will make sure that there will be a separate fund accounting that goes along with receipts of this type, and we will record them in the city's books as going into those funds. In terms of the day-to-day processing of a check, it should still feel very similar to how folks are used to today.
Okay, thanks.
As far as funding, when do we plan on discussing the cannabis funding?
I don't have a date, but we can go ahead and set something like that up. I mean, initially off the top of my head, my thought was to bring to council the stormwater and land use code items first, and then to start teeing up other resources and discussions as well.
Just to verify, in the meanwhile, until that is done, those cannabis funds cannot be used for anything, because my understanding is they're currently in general funds, correct?
So those funds have been deposited in the city's bank account and recorded as a revenue. They've not been appropriated, meaning the council did not plan on receiving that money, so we don't have the authority to spend those dollars
Okay.
yet. We would
Okay.
need to bring you an appropriations ordinance that says, yes, we've received that money, go spend it, and then we would be able to move
Okay.
from there
Thank
on the
you.
next steps. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's not going anywhere in the meantime?
Correct, it's in our account, until and unless the state claws it back.
Hey, everybody knock on wood right now.
I have a question about the evidence on the money you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
It seems like if it's evidence, how could you go deposit that in a bank and it go away when that evidence is collected and somebody calls it to court?
Danch, you want to take that one?
So the best answer I can give you, it's not always evidence, there's sometimes it's lost money, sometimes it's, we've arrested someone and they broke into multiple cars, so we have a lot of money setting at times.
But he was talking about drug house money.
Yes, sir.
That is, excuse me, what he said was drug house money if they go into a drug house and recoup money. That evidence could be deposited in a bank account?
It could, for safekeeping, evidentiary, yes. That way we're not housing a large sum of money.
So their lawyer calls it into court that says,
We can get it,
well, he said deposit this money in
Well, you're-
Wouldn't it be better than like a
Okay.
safety deposit box in a bank than?
Well, it may go into a safety deposit box, but the point just being
I'm
that
just trying to
we-
clarify what you said.
Well, all right, so, if drug house money was a bad example, then I apologize for the poor
Okay,
example,
that's-
but I think the main idea is, of course, we would follow the rules of evidence when we book these things. There are other times when we do get cash that can be deposited in a bank account that would be good to do, because right now, we have to do all of that in the same accounts as the rest of the general fund, and that's what is not a best practice for the audit.
Okay, I understand that, but your example was a little.
Well, I apologize for
Okay.
the frivolousness of the example, so. So I will bring ordinances to you next meeting that they essentially establish those funds. They will require 2 reads. I don't know that there's a reason to read them on an emergency basis, so we'll plan on a first read at the next meeting and then a second read at the meeting after that. Next item is Woodman repaving. So a little bit of good news, bad news, or rather bad news, good news. That's the project where, if you'll recall, we had approached ODOT about repaving the area from Eastman to Burkhardt in front of Kroger. And we had confirmation from ODOT that said, yes, you can go ahead and repave that section. The estimated cost is, I believe at the time, about $520,000 is what ODOT had quoted us. And I brought a resolution to council last year where council approved that expenditure that would come out of the capital infrastructure fund. After that resolution was passed, we got additional correspondence from ODOT that said, too bad, so sad. The other side of the office changed their mind, and they don't think that you can or should be able to do this work. So while that was discouraging, we went ahead and kind of knocked our heads together and figured out that it would be good to come back to council instead of just saying, oh, well, ODOT says no, to actually come up with some options. And so Ms. Moore and Shelby with CMT did an excellent job of going out to bid just to take a temperature check in the market about what it would cost if we were to not have ODOT manage this project, but to do it ourselves. The good news is that we can save about $100,000 doing it ourselves, and we can get more work done. So the lowest and best bidder was John Jurgensen, and their bid was just under $425,000. So that's a savings of about $95,000. And that repaving is substantially what we had run by ODOT and approved. And it also includes the shoulders, which were not included in the original conception of the project. And again, these monies come out of a capital improvement fund, which is a fund that our auditors are very interested in us getting rid of. So we need to spend the money that's in there. And there's, off the top of my head, I believe it's about $700,000 in that fund that we have budgeted to spend on this project in this year's budget in 2026. So that money is appropriated already. The catch is this: we appropriated that money as if ODOT was going to do this project. So the appropriations say, take $520,000 and go pay ODOT to be able to do this. Because we've rebid it, we would need to change the payee. So the money it wouldn't go to ODOT anymore, it would go to John Jurgensen since they were the lowest bidder. The bids are good for 30 days. In order to move forward with this project, we would need an appropriations ordinance that changes the vendor from ODOT to John Jurgensen, and then a resolution authorizing us to move forward with the new vendor. I'm happy to entertain any questions or discussion that you may have. If we were to move forward with this, then what you would expect is at the next meeting, we rarely do this, but given the timing of the bids, I think it would be essential, or we would have to let the whole bid process go. I would bring you an ordinance that appropriates $425,000 to John Jurgensen out of the Capital Improvement Fund. And all that would do is let us change the vendor from ODOT to John Jurgensen. We would need to read it twice in one night because we have 30 days to accept this bid, and I have to have money appropriated before we can move forward with the project. Assuming council passed that, then we would have a separate resolution then approving the expenditure of those funds. So there would actually be 2 pieces of legislation at the next meeting that would enable us to move forward with this project.
Are you saying the Jurgensen price is cheaper than what was originally approved for the ODOT to finish that?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a $95,000 savings, give or take a few dollars.
Okay.
Other questions for the city manager?
So I'm, again, between now and the next meeting, happy to answer any questions about this, but I do intend to bring you an ordinance and a resolution then to move forward with this bid.
And when we speak of capital infrastructure, we're not, what all does that include?
So the Capital Infrastructure Fund, it was money that prior councils had set aside to do these kinds of projects. Road repaving, bridges, things out there sort of in the world like that, these bigger
So that,
items.
this, just to clarify, this could also be another road anywhere within the city and not
So-
Woodman? Or does it have to be one of the main strips? That's what I'm asking.
So the council has discretion to choose the project in terms of how you want to spend those dollars.
Okay.
Where we are today is that the legwork that has been done on
Previously,
this
yes.
project and this section of Woodman, because of the state that it's in, and because of the timing of the other project, that's why this section is kind of up on deck, if you will.
Okay.
The other thing to remember is even if council chooses to move forward again with this project, there will still be a balance in that fund that could
Right.
be applied to other projects in the future.
Thank you.
All good on that? Cool. Then we'll get to what everybody's here for, which is stormwater.
Everybody's here for it.
All right. So while Beth and Michaela make their way up to the podium, I'll get my notes here too. All right, so we're trying something a little bit new. I'm kind of sick of PowerPoint. I don't know about everybody else. This is a software program that I want to give Michaela a lot of credit for running with over the last several weeks. What we want to do tonight is really set the table for, I think, a conversation, and the timing really is ripe for that, because the prior council adopted all of the legislation that's necessary to move forward with the stormwater utility fee, ordinances, resolution, et cetera. So as a matter of law, if you will, nothing else needs to be done legislatively in order for us to move forward implementing the program. But having said that, the bills are supposed to go out in April. We had a change of council. We've certainly had questions and comments from the community. And part of our role is to create a space for you all to have a conversation that affirms the direction that we're going in or that directs us to change course. And we will do either one of those. You are the policymakers for the city. But what I want to be sure that we do is have that conversation in a way that is as informed and contextualized as possible. So in other words, we want to try to tell the story about what's unique about Riverside, what has brought us to this point today, and why the fee breakdown is what it is, because I think that hopefully will help inform your thought process about where you want the service levels and the fees to be in terms of a stormwater program. So we want to do that tonight. Is really part one is just about where have we come from, where are we now, and how did that inform where we have been going to date. So we are going to try to get through this. There's a lot of ground to cover, as you can see. We're going to try to get through this fairly quickly and kind of keep things moving. But having said that, I think it's really important. There's a lot to digest here. If you have questions, ask as we go along. That way, I want to be sure that we try to answer as much as we possibly can while we're here. And of course, we are and will be available between now and the next meeting as well to navigate any other questions that you may think of after the fact or that come up as we go or after this meeting. So with that, I do want to introduce both Beth and Michaela. So Beth Moore is our Public Service Director, has been on staff here for 2 years? Year and a half. It'll be 2 years here shortly. And then Michaela Grant is our Public Works Operations Analyst. And I'll ask them to both introduce themselves, and then I will try to drive this presentation and not get us lost. So take it away.
Alrighty. Good evening, Mayor Williams, Council. Like Josh said, my name is Michaela. I'm the Operations Analyst for the Public Service Department. Speaking to the microphone. I started in April of last year, and I come from the city of Bellbrook, where I served as the Utility Billing Administrator, and before that, I was an intern for the Village of Yellow Springs. So we will go ahead and start off with several factors we've got here. We're going to start with geography and infrastructure. And these are highly unique to Riverside and are worth taking time to consider as they relate to stormwater management. So starting off with rivers and major streams. So this is the first unique consideration. It's the impact that these waterways have on our community. I'm sure most are familiar with the Great Miami and Mad Rivers, along with Lily Creek, the Little Beaver Creek, and their tributaries. And if we move forward, all good. We will see on our map here the waterways as they move their way through the city. So we see them both in the north portion and the southern portion, along with surrounding the entire city, our entire community. And so while we enjoy the proximity for both recreation and stormwater drainage, they pose a flooding risk and challenge for stormwater management as they continue to accept high volumes of rain and snow melt. So then moving on. So then moving to the Great Miami Buried Valley Aquifer, we start off with an infographic that shows just a cross-section of underground what an aquifer is. So that is a underground layer of sand and gravel that is saturated with groundwater, and it acts like a large sponge that stores and transmits water. So then if we proceed, we will see in orange there in the middle where Riverside lies within this aquifer. And so we sit basically in the middle there of the Great Miami Buried Valley Aquifer. And so it's important in stormwater management as water infiltrates into it, but it does have a limited capacity to accept drainage, especially due to our high groundwater table. With most of the city situated directly above the aquifer, it makes drainage difficult when the aquifer is full and holds a larger volume of water. So that makes discharging especially challenging in the northern parts of the city where we have lower elevation, and even in the southern areas due to just that high groundwater table where the water is just so close to the surface, it just has a limited capacity to be able to accept additional drainage as that volume increases. If we can advance. We'll move to our final water element is the watershed. So going there, we'll see that a watershed is an area of land where all rain and snowmelt flows or drains downhill into a common body of water like a stream, river, lake, ocean. Nowhere close to here, of course, the ocean, but it's like a large bowl or a sink where water collects and flows towards that lowest point. It's the natural geography of where that water flows. And so moving forward, we will see again where Riverside lies and in that watershed. And so as we can see, there is a lot of light blue that covers the city. And so the north side of town does sit towards the bottom of that bowl analogy, and the southern portion does have more elevation. And anything in that light blue sends water into the city. And like I said, there is a lot. And just like with our other water bodies, stormwater management makes it difficult because this is where most of water drains, where water is already present. So again, it's a question of volume in that case. And then so if we advance. So moving on to other physical factors, we have our stormwater infrastructure. And as we know, the city is not contiguous. We are a city of islands. And this can make implementing stormwater solutions difficult due to jurisdictional complexities between Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the city of Dayton. Stormwater is a system, or stormwater management is referred to as like a systems issue, and so that can make all of the borders that we have and all of those jurisdictions, that can make it challenging to govern and come up with solutions. Additionally, there are many areas that exist that lack any stormwater infrastructure to begin with. Undocumented asset information also further complicates things. It's a foundational part of stormwater management, maintaining accurate records with infrastructure information like installation date, condition, size, and material. And to go along with that is an incomplete systems map. So that is another foundational component that shows all of our asset locations, how they connect. And if we go forward, we can see here where it looks like it might be full, but we can see in areas over near, I know it's sort of small there, but near Community Drive where no infrastructure exists. We see little blips here and there of areas where it looks like they connect, but then doesn't. And so it's incomplete. It's what we have. It's certainly a good start, but part of getting a good solution and moving forward with that foundational piece is having a full map that shows us all of our asset details. Knowing what we have and where it is, it helps us to assess system capacity and gaps, and that's highly valuable in effective planning. So now Beth will review the 2015 Stormwater Master Plan that addresses some of the areas where issues do exist. To recap, the master plan looked at addressing the issues and considerations that we had just reviewed. And with that unique context that we talked about, that's what they had looked at, and that context exists today. Those are still issues that we are dealing with. So to that, I will hand off to Beth.
All right, thanks, Michaela. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time tonight to talk about stormwater. It's one of my favorite topics. I love the environment. Like Josh said, I've been with the city about a year and a half. I've actually spent my entire career in public works and public utilities, having previously worked for the cities of Mason, Miamisburg, Dayton, and then also, most recently, Montgomery County Environmental Services. So public works, public utilities, near and dear to my heart. I think Michaela just kind of shared with you what makes Riverside unique, and I think that's what I enjoy in looking at how do we manage a utility in Riverside when our natural water features are very unique to us. So Michaela talked about, our many rivers and streams. We actually sit on top of one of the largest aquifers in the United States, which is good and bad. Like we said, the water table's high. And then when we look at our challenges, being like a city of islands chopped up by Dayton annexation in the past, that stormwater system, we have to marry natural water features with man-made infrastructure. And it's challenging, but doable. So I think we're going to start, the master plan divided the city up in north and south. And when you look at, I've spent the past months kind of looking back in the electronic and paper files, trying to see like how did we get where we are today, and then how do we move forward. And it looks like really from the time we incorporated as a city, these stormwater problems started cropping up. And the city might try to address them with some maintenance issues from the staff, or they might hire somebody to do a study. So we did some really small studies and fixes. But eventually in 2014, the city made a decision that we needed to hire an engineering firm to take a comprehensive look at the big stormwater problems at that time. So if we want to go we'll start in the north. And just to know, as I read the master plan, and just having been here a year and a half, the master plan does not list all of the known stormwater problems, or it doesn't even address major stormwater infrastructure like bridges. The projects identified in the plan were ones that you saw pop up that gave residents and staff concern. So it's definitely a solid starting point for a 30-year master plan, but just so you know, by having read it multiple times, it's not comprehensive. So we'll dive into the north. You'll see this overview of our north half of the city, and then some key problem areas identified. So we'll jump in with problem area number 1. This is called, in the study, the Marianne, Ingleside, and State Route 202 area. And we'll start with looking at some pictures. And these are historical. And I want to say thank you to the staff, especially Kevin Miller. The photo history of the problems, well before we had an electronic work order system, it's amazing. So I think pictures tell a story. So here we are, Marianne and Rosary flooding. Old Troy Pike and Ingleside, that looks pretty rough. And then Community Drive. So the problems in this area are yard and basement flooding, street flooding, ponding of water. The area was so big, they actually divided in 2 sub-areas, but the master plan recommended solution was really installation of a traditional stormwater collection system and a new outfall. So I should have mentioned up front, I took all the 2015 master plan costs, and then I put them into the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator. That's a tool that's available online. It's in really tiny print at the bottom of the blue column, but I can share that with anyone who wants to. So when I plug those in, it actually resulted from 2015, it's current through November of 25. It's basically a 28% increase on those costs. So you'll see the 2015 cost, basically 1.3 million, today 1.8 million. next problem area. Problem area number 2, Aurora, Broadmead, Warrendale, Pleasant Valley. Traditional infrastructure, this really isn't a catch basin connected to anything. It's a dry well that goes nowhere. So it drains the street, and maybe historically in the past, when the water table from the aquifer was significantly lower, these dry wells actually functioned in a lot of cases. With the water table being high, the dry wells don't function as they used to and don't really drain the street, because what is a dry well? It's kind of like an empty pipe filled with gravel at the bottom. So you'll actually, when you pop the lids on some of these, you actually see water coming up through the gravel in the bottom. That's our groundwater table. Lorella Pond. It is a city-owned pond. It was not designed to be part of the stormwater infrastructure system. It was a former gravel pit, but it worked out. I was able to solve some problems at the time, so it is used as part of our stormwater infrastructure. The major concern with this and constructing, we can go on to the master plan recommendations, which the master plan recommends installing and constructing a storm sewer system that drains to Lorella Pond. That's great, but Lorella Pond is an old gravel pit. It has no overflow outlet. So I would recommend extensive hydraulic analysis and modeling before we drain anything to Lorella Pond, because if you aren't careful, you just transfer the flooding problem from those further away the pond to those who live next to the pond. That 2015 estimated cost, $647,000, today projected at $898. And once again, these costs, these are the bottom floor, that they do not include everything needed to construct and design a correct solution.
If that's the case, what does that number represent then?
When I studied the plan, that number, it considered a 20% engineering design cost and then a 25% construction contingency. It did not include any mapping of the upstream and downstream of the system. It did not include any condition assessment. Normally, when you're tying into any infrastructure, you would camera inspect that to confirm what it's actually made of and that it has integrity. It did not include any right-of-way acquisition, easement acquisition, lengthy processes, lengthy costs, any modeling. Typically, when you would design a new stormwater system, you would want modeling that's current within the past 5 years that accurately models everything there, so you're designing for the current year of what you have. There was inconsistencies. When you design a stormwater system, you would typically design it to possibly residential, typically a 20, 25-year storm. I saw some of the recommendations as low as only designing for a 2-year storm, a 5-year storm. I saw a 50-year storm. So and not having been part of this team or present at the time, it looks like the master plan, with the time and budget they had, they tried to do the best they could to come up with a solution that was alleviated some of the problem, but maybe not all of the problem. So we really have to be thoughtful when we go about, number one, thoroughly evaluating these projects. And then, of course, we would rank them using objective criteria, so we could make sure we did it in an order that made sense, like not putting the cart before the horse. Some of these problems are upstream or downstream of other problems, so you want to strategically attack those so you don't shift the flooding somewhere else.
All right, thank you for the explanation.
We can hop on to problem area number 3. And Dawes, Beatrice, Upper Avondale, Hypatia. Same thing, yard flooding, street flooding, ponding of water, and then this one also includes sheet flow erosion along Brant Pike. Recommended solution, installation of some curb and gutter, a traditional storm sewer system, upsizing and realignment of some of the existing pieces of storm sewer, major concern I had upon reviewing this is that the discharge location for this flow, and that, you look at that, you know, that's close to 10,000 linear feet of flow, discharges to a privately owned downstream ditch with no known capacity analysis. So when I say we got to dive deeper, we got to dive deeper. Price tag on that, 2.7 million in 2015, and the total, those combined, 3.8 today. That's a big one. All right, and problem area 6. There are other problem areas. I did not change the numbering of the problems identified in the master plan, so we could be consistent. But problem areas 4 and 5 still exist. They weren't as extreme, and they did not do a cost estimate on those. So when I say we're just touching the big ones, we haven't touched those. So 6 is the next one, Northern Circle, yard and street flooding, ponding of water. And actually, since we did the master plan in 2015, we now have severe erosion along the road on Northern Circle and the creek where the road is close to falling into the creek. The master plan recommended solution, installation of a traditional storm sewer system. It's going to require right-of-way acquisition. 2015 estimated cost was about $500,000. Today, $687,000. But that does not include the road issue, which is it gets worse every day. All right. Now we are going to jump to the south side of town. Equal problems, similar in nature, just different areas. So problem area 8 is identified in the master plan. It's at 4th and Mon. Similar things, localized flooding, catch basins that don't really go anywhere, dry wells. This one, this trash rack, actually fabricated by the Public Works staff, helps. That is at the bottom of an extreme hill that catches all kinds of debris, leaves, stick. So that's just to kind of keep that catch basin open and flowing. Master plan recommended to actually restore the open ditch system, which I thought was interesting because a lot of properties in this area, the front yards are tiny, there might be no driveways, you have limited yard and limited on-street parking. So over the decades, and this is common everywhere, residents filled in those ditches to make the yard flat, right? So you might have a better place for the kids to play, or a little spot where you could kind of pull your car off the road. So I really want us to think twice about any of these recommendations that suggest reinstalling ditches in the front yard, because I don't know that that's going to be a solution that people want. But that was the cheapest solution at the time, estimated in 2015 to be 1.5 million, and today over 2 million.
For a reference point, would a buried tile work as a substitute?
It would.
Okay, just so we have an
It
idea of
would.
what we're looking at.
Yeah. Open ditch system and a buried pipe function similarly, but the benefit of the buried pipe is all below ground, right? And you can have a nice flat yard.
But you might limit capacity.
Mm-hmm. Problem area number 9, Airway Road ditch. This is a doozy. And this ditch, you know, runs alongside Airway, starting at the eastern border where we are at Greene County, and then follows along Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The challenges of this ditch, well, our neighbors being Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and the federal government's maybe historic lack of interest in being a partner to maintain this ditch that borders their property, their primary property, the base, but also has multiple unidentified outlets into this ditch from their housing property, the prairies. So if anyone has ever worked on utility infrastructure plans with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they do not publish any of their maps of their utilities, and that is for, you know, government reasons. but it makes it very difficult to be a partner in shared infrastructure when they don't share their maps. So although this project just requires dredging of the ditch, it would be a partnership project with Wright Pat. The estimated cost in 2015 was $152,000, today $211,000. I put this one as maybe one of the harder ones to even accomplish because of the partnership we would have to have. All right, problem area 10, Lily Creek. In my opinion, this is the most challenging stormwater infrastructure problem in our city. And that's my opinion, just having seen situations like this. This one, I've never seen as many properties impacted. So the problems are extensive. This Lily Creek tributary, right, it receives flow from Riverside, but also from City of Dayton and City of Beaver Creek. And we all know that rainwater doesn't observe jurisdictional boundaries, right? And water flows downhill, so here it comes. But when I look at the number of problems here, it's erosion, severely impacting private property and structures. I mean, even undermining foundations of garages, right? Chunks of it falling off and clogging up culverts. Trees undermine as erosion is ripped through there and falling into the creek. Private property flooding, basement flooding, undersized culvert crossings at roadways, degrading asset condition, almost no drainage easements on Lily Creek, no access for heavy equipment to even get in there to do the work. So that channel just continues to fall in on itself, right? And backyards fall in on it. I just think it is for sure our most challenging problem. So when the master plan contemplated solutions, and this was looked at more than one time, it was looked at by multiple engineering firms in the past. The recommendation they came up with was creating a detention pond at Shellebarger Park, and then building a relief sewer along Bayside Drive. This does not address all of the backyards that are falling into the creek. This just takes that stormwater flow a different path. Any work in that creek would require Ohio EPA permits, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits, and it would be a lengthy project. So the price tag at 2015 on that recommended solution was $6 million, up over 8.3 today. This one probably is the one that's estimated way low, way low. All right. Last problem area in the south. Mayapple, Harlow, Scheller, similar problems, right? Ditch conveyance, some people still have the ditches, some don't. We have flooding, ponding, collapsing of channels. And when you look back to the 1950s, right, these properties were designed to have ditches, and then things developed over time and people filled them in. This is one of my favorite, most recent photos. Our current construction project on Woodman. Kevin and I got a call by the contractor Barrett to come out and take a look at this. So they are easily 6-8 feet below grade where they were excavating to build the new bike path along the side. And they found an entire storm sewer system below the road that we didn't have mapped, we didn't know existed, but they uncovered it. So when we talk about the importance of knowing your system, having it mapped, having it accurately detailed, and there is water flowing through this, it wasn't stormwater, it was groundwater infiltrating it because the water table is so high there. So like mystery infrastructure, oof, one, it gets ODOT pretty excited and you have to respond immediately. But that's something we need to take care of by really getting an accurate map of our system. Might be familiar with this ditch, flooding. This project area is huge. So they divided it into two hydraulically independent sub-areas. One area east of Spinning and the other one west of Spinning. And then when you look at the price tag on the recommended improvements, they indicated we still need further downstream evaluation because currently on the second area, there's a 72-inch elliptical that really needs to be looked at. It's never been inspected. And so they're saying bottom dollar costs for both of these combined, back then 3.66, today 7.1, but highly qualified with future study needed. All right, should be back to the big one. So this is just an overall, all those project areas we just talked about. You can see the 2015 price tag on those total was 16.5. Plugging those numbers into the Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator gets us to about 23 million. And when I look at the work that was done, that 2015 master plan, it is for sure, it's an evaluation, a technical evaluation, which is good. It took a look at our biggest stormwater challenges. Like I mentioned, the cost estimates are the floor of what we can expect to spend, as there are significant things yet to be factored in, like current hydraulic modeling, right-of-way acquisition, survey, geotechnical work, system mapping. These project price tags, they're huge, right? They are huge. In fact, I think really only one of them appears to be less than $500,000. That's the airway ditch, and that one involved partnering with the base. Typically, there are very few to no grants available for standalone stormwater projects. The only ones I've seen successful in the past, and this is in my distant past, is through OPWC, when partnered with maybe a drinking water and sanitary and roadway project. So when I looked at this level of capital investment needed, and then kind of looking at the big picture of what it takes to just operate and maintain our system, I feel like this master plan did a really good job of capturing the revenue needed to sustain and stand up a long-term capital plan. This list isn't the end-all be-all, but it's a really good start to solve the problems. I think I'm turning it over to you, Josh.
Any questions for Michaela or Beth about anything that they've showed before we move on?
Again, this doesn't take into account new issues, new neighborhoods that's been built, anything like that.
This plan, completed in August of 2015, reference document, but no work has been done to fix these problems.
Not a question, but a comment. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I'm fairly certain we all understand the need for a solid stormwater infrastructure and the importance. We all live in areas where we've seen firsthand the things that have been pictured here and the issues. But at the end of the day, we have to keep in mind that we're asking for people to pay for this amongst the rising costs of everything else going on right now, and we need to make sure that the burden is reasonable. It took a long time to get to this level of damage. It's going to take a long time to get out of that level of damage, and I think we need to make sure we're mindful of that.
I have a question about maintenance.
Yes.
So the numbers that are listed on this slide are referred to as the construction cost. Is there a percentage of that cost or some other calculation that we expect to go toward the maintenance of the stormwater?
This plan did not do a life cycle analysis of cost, which I think is one of the critical pieces maybe missing. Whenever I do an analysis to consider an infrastructure project, I like to consider the life cycle cost analysis. Some things might be maybe more expensive on the front end for capital, but be cheaper in the long run for maintenance, or vice versa. They might be cheaper on the front end for capital and maybe require more maintenance dollars. That's why I typically take every asset, every type of asset we have, a manhole, a catch basin, a pipe material, and everything has an expected useful life and then a maintenance plan that goes with it. So I think once we get into the projects, we have to be very thoughtful in an alternatives analysis and really consider life cycle costs. That's a good point, Brenda.
Thank you.
Not so much a question for them, but also back to the stormwater fee. And, you know, it's all been out there. We've all seen residents' remarks on it. It was more like sticker shock, I think, than anything. The majority of residents understands what happened, the need, where we're at. But falling back to what Angel said, with the current economy, us as a city being more lower to moderate income, I believe, just cannot currently afford what has already been approved and put out there. And I don't know if this is the time to start this discussion.
We're going to end at a place that I think is a perfect jumping off point for that.
Okay.
So let me get through the back half of the
That'll work.
presentation, and I think that sets us up nicely.
Okay.
For exactly where you're going. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, so the other thing, though, that I think is important to cover here, just in terms of the overall context, is the history of this conversation, because it is not a conversation that happened overnight. So you can actually go back as far as 1932, and probably even before then, but, you know, this is about the earliest we could dig up. So this is a conversation that's 94 years old. If you go back and pull the Dayton Daily News, you'll find an article talking about flooding in Floral Park. That article actually discusses dredging Lily Creek. We've actually heard just recently about other projects recommending dredging of various creeks. So again, this is a conversation that's got really, really deep roots, as far back as that. Then you can flash forward to the 60s in, whoops, hold on, sorry. I'm doing a couple of these at once. In November of 1967, Montgomery County was actually asked to look at a flood protection project in Floral Park. It's difficult to read on there, but if you go pull that article, the project at that time to fix the issues in Floral Park was estimated at $471,000 in 1967. Anybody want to guess what that is today? 4.5 million. So close. You started with 3.
Factor of 10.
$4.5 million in today's dollars to fix what was going on in Floral Park. And actually, that is the same year that other conversations were happening. I think that's the same year the county bought the land on Spalding for the wastewater treatment plant. So the county has some involvement going back that far as well. Then in 1968, whoops, Josh, wrong button. There we go. In 1968, Lily Creek overflowed again, and it forced a couple of Byesville Platte residents out of their homes, and poor Jack Moses almost drowned. He lived at 2129 Forest Home. So it was a problem that was not resolved in the 60s. You can then flash forward to 1995. So the city incorporated, and pretty much immediately, that article talks about how the city had budget issues and had to go about reducing service because there wasn't enough revenue to do the work that was needed, and there was no money for stormwater. Then in 2002, the Miami Conservancy District started talking about a more regional approach to stormwater management, and the Riverside Council at the time expressed an interest in participating in that because we had no funding to address stormwater independently on our own. Then you come into the mid-aughts. So from 2005 to 2010, the city engaged several firms to take a look at drainage studies all around the Ingleside area, Lily Creek, Mon, Mayapple, a bunch of the neighborhoods and problem areas that we've already shown you were starting to be looked at in more detail. In 2010, we also discussed, the city, erosion along Lily Creek near Shellabarger and passing a potential tax to address just that problem in the Shellabarger area. Nothing ended up moving forward. And so revenue then continued to shrink going into 2012, and you'll see there were newspaper articles to that effect too about possible tax hikes, and then our financial picture deteriorating in and around 2012. In 2011, 2012, that was when a lot of this shallow water work was being done, so there was a pipe capacity investigation that was done, and the city started tracking stormwater maintenance costs. Then in 2013, that's when you first start seeing conversations about a stormwater utility fee. That was 13 years ago. That work then teed up the idea about doing a stormwater master plan, which Beth just covered in great detail. And we then started doing the engineering work on calculating impervious surface areas back at that time. There was also a community meeting on February 20th, 2018, which was 6 years ago, specifically about stormwater utility fees. So a lot of the work there in the mid-2010s, 2014 to 2018 period, was really revolving around the master plan and the results that Beth just previewed with everybody. In 2022 and 2023 is when legislation really started to advance. So I started with the city in 2021. The council at the time gave me a directive, a goal, which was, we've been talking about stormwater for quite a long time. Let's move the legislation and try to actually get something done. So in 2022, we discussed stormwater at 6 separate council meetings. And I actually, at one of those first meetings, had the pleasure of informing the city council that we, the city, had a notice of violation from the EPA for noncompliance with stormwater regulations. So part of the impetus in terms of moving this forward was to get back into compliance and back into the EPA's good graces so that we could avoid fines and all the other consequences that come with that.
Consent decrees.
And other various and sundry things that the federal government will do to cities that don't comply, and their elected officials and staff. So we discussed the stormwater utility fee throughout that year, and a lot of the work that was done revolved around the ordinance, the base maps. We talked about how we would collect fees or some options for doing that. All that resulted in adopting the ordinance in December of that year. And then in 2023, we began a lot of the groundwork, and this was discussed or mentioned at these city council meetings about the policy manual, moving forward with utility billing software, implementation, and actually discussing ERUs and related fees in some detail. Then in 2024 and 2025, we mostly, at council meetings, recapped all the work that had been done to date. And May 9th of 2024, I believe, is when we actually started the conversation about one utility bill that would have both solid waste, because the trash contract was expiring, as well as stormwater on the same bill. That impacted our implementation timeline, because then we had to sync up when the trash contract was expiring with when we could make headway on the stormwater utility fee question. And all of that culminated with the fee, the council adopting the fee in August of 2024, and then in 25, we had some updates regarding work that had been done to date. The other thing that I'll point out is that throughout this process, especially since I've been in this role, we started the engineering process side of this as far as the utility fees with Choice One. We then had another company come in that specializes in stormwater fee administration, Raftelis, to do a peer review of that. And we have just wrapped up our city engineer, CMT, doing a third review. The idea is to be as accurate and consistent as possible with the ERUs and the square footage of impervious area so that the bills are as correct and accurate as we can possibly make them before they go out. So that's a conversation that matured over decades and years, especially the last couple of years, and it led us basically to this point. And that point is essentially this. The idea is there are 3 components that the prior council had given direction for us to consider in terms of structuring this fee and what it should pay for. The first component is what I'd like to call a core operating component. When we talk about core operating, we're talking about the people and the portion of their salaries and overhead and other fringe costs that actually go out and do this work. So our assumption has been that about 20% of most folks' time in the public service department is going to be dedicated to stormwater. That's everything from the regular maintenance to street sweeping to Vector trucks to anything having to do with stormwater maintenance and management projects. In total, in the 2026 budget, when you add up 20% of basically everybody's positions, it's just under 3.5 full-time employees that would be dedicated to stormwater. It's about $325,000 a year in terms of personnel overhead costs to man and maintain this program. This is also the amount of money that prior councils were interested in a dedicated fee allocated for this purpose so that the general fund does not have to subsidize this work. Every year that I've been here, the general fund has sent a significant amount of money to the streets fund to support the public service department. That department doesn't have its own revenue source, so all of the stormwater work that we've been doing has come out of the general fund, basically. Part of the thought about the fee is that fee then would directly pay for these services, directly pay for this proportion of overhead costs, and that means that about $325,000 would not have to come out of the general fund. It could be used for other purposes, whatever council decides. So that's your core operating component. Other operating really comes in three parts. There's stormwater maintenance, and that's going to be everything from the usual break-fix work that we do. Things like we're going to go try to fix a sinkhole, we're going to go replace manhole covers where they're related to stormwater, we'll replace catch basins where we're able, storm tile restorations. We actually partnered with, I believe, OPWC on this project, which is to replace the Olentangy Drive Bridge. So that was outsourced, but we had that partnership in place to do this. We respond to emergencies. So there was a machine shop fire that created, stormwater challenges because of contaminated runoff. We have to buy pickup trucks to do this work. We have to buy large dump trucks to do this work. We have a street sweeper that is getting very long in the tooth. We just had a Vector completely break down, so we don't have a Vector anymore. Concrete trucks, if you have to go pour and set new concrete, backhoes, all other related equipment. That's the first part of just the tools and materials that we need to actually go do stormwater maintenance work. The other part of this is permitting, and I won't read all of this. Anybody can go out and pull NPDES permits and dive into as many EPA regulations as you'd like. But the practical reality is we have to comply with the EPA's rules. If we don't comply with the EPA's rules, there's all sorts of fun language that they've sprinkled into all of these recommendations. And I've just highlighted a few keywords here, things like imprisonments, felonies, misdemeanors, fines, reimbursements, all of which are applicable to everybody in the city that's responsible for any part of this, including but not limited to staff and the governing body. So it's in our best interest to comply with the EPA. Then there's the utility billing component, which is what we have to have inside this house to create, compose, send utility bills, help people out with that, do the accounting and the software support for it. And then where people have installed rain barrels or rain gardens and those sorts of things, to go out, validate what they've installed, give them credits on their bills, process things, address concerns and things of that nature. So that is sort of the other operating bucket. If you add core operating and other operating together, what we're trying to communicate is it takes about $900,000 to run a stormwater maintenance and management program that just keeps us afloat, keeps doing what we've been doing, keeps us in the EPA's good graces, and avoids deficit spending or a subsidy out of the general fund. The rest of the money is $1.1 million, which would then be allocated to capital projects, which are all the projects that we've just talked about. So when you add all of those up, you're looking at a time frame of about 23 years to complete just the work that we've talked about. If you have about $1 million to throw at it per year, and I'm not counting any other inflation coming down the pike or any of the other unquantifiables that we haven't estimated yet, just 23 million divided by 1 million is 23 years just to get through the projects that we've talked about tonight. That does not count any of these things that Beth has mentioned, that we've mentioned, as far as all the other considerations that are involved in actually fixing the infrastructure problem. So the reason we landed at trying to generate $2 million in terms of a stormwater utility fee is that amount of money allows us to operate a program that's self-sufficient and creates enough capital or enough money to tackle the capital projects in a time frame that's typical for this kind of an undertaking. Most capital master plans, like a stormwater master plan, you try to tackle them in about 25 years. So in order to do both of these things, it requires revenue of about $2 million. And when you back that into the number of ERUs across the whole city, so an ERU is the equivalent of what one single-family residential property generates on average, that is where we landed at $12 a month. And then we had other discussions about how to break that down in recognition of the fact that a lot of our single-family properties are of different sizes, right? So that's kind of where I want to leave it today, which is that there was a very deliberate thought process that went behind the amount of money that we're trying to collect, because it is all in service of trying to keep a program afloat and tackle these projects in a reasonable time frame. Having said that, I think staff are certainly aware, and obviously we've heard things from the community, and obviously we've had another election, and this council's priorities may be different, and that's okay. This is one of those areas where there's not a right answer. The right answer is whatever the city council decides to do. But from a staff perspective, our job is to help inform you about what we think will happen depending on what policy direction you would like to take. So at this point, what I would say is when we come back to you in February, our intention is to break this out. And so to basically give you a scenario that says, okay, if you were to do $9 per month per ERU, $6 per month per ERU, or completely get rid of it, what does that do in terms of our bottom line, but also our ability to deliver on these projects? Yes?
Jesse has
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank our staff. I know you have all worked very, very hard on this, and I want to say, Josh, I know you've gotten a lot of flack over this, but this was the direction of the council to have Josh and the staff work through this. We understand that there is a need for this. I think everybody understands that there's a need for this. And at the time that we started working on this, the economy was a little different. Things were a little bit different. Electric wasn't going up the way it was. The water bill wasn't going up the way it was. Gas wasn't going up. I mean, everything is just going up, right? So things are different. And we understand that, and we have heard what everybody is saying, has been saying. As much as I know that we need to implement the full amount to get this done in a timely manner, I just don't know if this is the right time to do it all at once. Obviously, it's not all at once, but start the process all at once. I've been thinking about this a lot. I just wonder if we would be better off maybe looking at, a staggered structure, maybe a slow implementation of this, maybe cutting the ERU in half or something like that, and then staggering over like every couple years, kind of a slow increase or something like that. So that's not a full smack in the face, and maybe hopefully some things have slowed down a little bit, hopefully from an economic standpoint, because like I said, I know everybody's getting their gas, electric, water bills, everything right now, and everything's just going up, and just adding this to the mix, I think is just one more thing on everybody. So that's something that I've been kind of thinking about would be I think at least that gets us started in the right direction, doesn't get us going where we want it to go right away, as much as I want us to, as much I think as a community I think we need to, but at least we're getting our foot in the water and going at least somewhere.
Some progress.
Some progress, and then knowing that we have at least a direction. I don't even know if it's possible to put that in the in the ordinance or resolution or whatever to say, here is the system, and every couple of years there will be an increase or whatever, just so that it's in place. That's my thought process.
That's what's important to me, is that what we implement is a whole policy, not just, well, let's scale back and we'll deal with the rest later, and then you get into a kick the can down the road kind of situation.
Which is what we've done
and which is what has caused us so much harm in the past. So I agree with you, Jesse, that a staggered approach, I think, is a really reasonable way to look at it. But what I would like to see in the options presented, something that looks at the whole implementation and gets us to the completion mark by some date certain.
And I want to apologize to the staff, because I know you all put a lot of work into putting the whole fee structure in, and the budget and everything else based off of what we had in place. I know there was a lot of work in that, but I think just over time, I think there's just, and the presentations going out and everything else too from other people and hearing from the community, I think there's definitely needed for us to relook at it. So I do apologize to the staff on the basis of all the work that you all have put into this, so.
Well, I appreciate that. I really don't think you need to apologize. I
Well-
mean, this is the way these things go. Our job is to pivot with you, you know? So again, like this is, like I just said, this is not a situation where there's a right answer objectively. It's whatever you're comfortable with, and as our environment changes, that's the council's role, is to pivot with those changes. So we could keep talking, of course, I don't want to preempt anybody else, but I was preparing basically on coming back to you at the next meeting with the master fee resolution in hand that either has the results of this conversation or just some blanks in it, and then based on the conversation that we all have, you could vote on the resolution as early as next meeting if you're comfortable with that, or we could continue into later February. But I don't want to cut you all off if there's more. I know.
Frida,
I
you
would
had a few
like to
things.
speak.
Yeah. by all means.
I too am with the, I'm actually for cutting it in half for now. I was not sure of how I was thinking to stagger exactly, but, I mean, 2 years to me sounds great, until we get up to the fees that we know are going to be necessary, the fee structure that we already have. So, I mean, in my opinion, we've already got, I mean, I think we could almost agree now to go half and then add every 2 years until we're at where we need to be.
I would want to make sure that Josh and the team does look at the math and make sure that the maths correctly, so that,
Well,
you know,
right.
You'd
But
have
I
to
mean,
bring
if
back
we-
a resolution.
Right,
next
if we
meeting.
start out with half, then, I mean, they would have to determine, of course, every 2 years what
At
that
what point
amount's
we
going to
stagger up
change.
to.
Yes, to get to the complete.
I also think that the tier structure is fair. As somebody with a lot of impervious surface on my property, it's reasonable that my rate would be a higher level than somebody with less impervious surface.
One question I had, Josh, and this doesn't have to be answered now, but just something that I would be helpful information, I think. Our ability to bond out projects will largely be contingent on the amount of cash flow that we can make work for debt service over a set period of time. So if we know there's going to be, with the first scenario presented, if there's going to be $1 million a year or 1.1 million a year in extra money, essentially, we can bond out a lot of projects because we know that money's going to be there and it can be easily bonded. And this doesn't have to be answered now, but just something that would be helpful to know. Is there a dollar amount where bonding out really doesn't become something that is mathematically possible or financially prudent to do, and we could maybe expect, if we're at, say, if we cut it in half, that for the first X number of years, we're doing upkeep and maintenance, and capital will kick off once we hit a certain threshold of funding.
Yeah, I did have a chance to talk with Larry, Mr. Harlov, about this a little bit before this meeting. And, you know, and I don't want to speak for him. I'll make sure he comes to the next meeting as well. He basically made a comment that in his experience, that threshold is about $1 million. Most bondholders aren't going to look at you unless you can pledge $1 million in revenue. That doesn't mean the market's not there. You could maybe say, okay, if we're bringing in $500,000 a year, we want to try to use that to bond for capital. The market may be there for that. It's just that you start getting into things like, well, are you paying more interest because it's a lower amount of money?
Right, it's
Does it
not
cost you
financially
more to
feasible.
finance? Right. So it's a bit of a fuzzy question, but I'll visit with him again and try to get a little bit more refined.
Yeah, and I just think that's important for folks to understand that we want to be responsive and we want to be people who listen to the folks in the community, but also understand that if we do give up maybe bucket number 2 for now, that there's likely not to be physical viable improvements that you can see on stuff that maybe was still flooding. We're going to hopefully do a much better job of upkeep and maintenance, and problems won't grow. But some of the things that have of the projects we saw and some of those photos that were more than a little dicey, that might not get addressed right away. I just want to make sure everybody understands. If that's a decision we're willing to make, then that's fine. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands that's part of the decision.
So just to recap briefly, what I'm hearing is a general appetite to look at this through some sort of a tiered or a phased approach, where we basically start at half and then phase in over time until we're at the prior recommended amount.
Just wanna
And
make
I
sure
don't want to
everybody-
speak for you, Frida. You mentioned every 2 years to change that rate?
Well, actually, just for the record, Jesse mentioned 2 years first.
Okay.
And I would be in agreement with 2 years.
I don't know if
I-
that's plausible or.
I would like some comparison to, like, an annual increase as
Okay.
well.
Just so we could
That's
see
fair. Yep.
apples and oranges or whatever.
Okay, so we will basically, I'll plan on bringing you 2 models.
Okay.
So one will be the slide you just looked at, which is leave it alone. And then I'll bring you 2 models. One will be phase it in with, let's say, $1 increase per year until it gets up to $12. And then the other will be phase it in every other year at $1 every other year. And then what I can do is help to draw that distinction out so that we can show for every year over that course of that plan, here's how much could be allocated to capital. So by the time you get to the tail end of that plan, you would have X dollars in the bank that you could apply to a capital project. And the time frame that will take to get there on that. And I think, and like I said, I will also prep the resolution itself. So I
So we
will
can
have
actually
that
vote.
handy. We will have that discussion when we tee up the resolution,
Mm-hmm.
if that's okay with council. And then I think that gets us to a place where you can talk about it, you can make a motion then, as long as there's consensus, you could make a motion to direct us to adopt whatever comes out of that conversation and vote on the resolution, and we're basically finished at that point. Or if you need more time, we can table the resolution for the next council meeting and continue that. Is that,
Any other questions for Josh? Speak now, or agenda's moving along.
all right. Well, I appreciate everybody's patience with that. I know that's a lot of material to cover.
Well,
And
thank the
you
staff.
again to Beth
you,
and
Michaela
Michaela,
and
who
Beth.
have been diligently answering trash phone calls in addition to honoring my copious request to edit Prezi presentations. So I appreciate it. All right, moving on. Last item for discussion is an update on our Unified Development Ordinance. Again, the idea here is just we're trying to make a space for council to have a conversation about the land use code, the UDO. We did have a chance to have some conversations behind the scenes. I do want to turn it over to Naya, Todd, whoever wants to go on first for this one. Let me, can you tap that mic real quick? Thank you. All right, you're good.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for your patience. You now are at the meat of the meeting now. With me, I have our esteemed consultant with ZoneCo, and if you have not seen him yet, as well as our new zoning administrator, I will let them introduce themselves.
You're good.
Todd Kinsky with Zoomco. Good evening. My name is Cody Smith. I'm the new zoning administrator for the city of Riverside. Pleasure to be here with you all this evening. Previously served as the township administrator and zoning director for Bethel Township in Miami County, and prior to that, I was the assistant director for the Center for Local Government. So, looking forward to being in Riverside. I've been here since November, so still getting my feet wet and learning everything, but glad to be a part of the city and looking forward to the work we're going to do.
So we will jump right into part 2. This has been a lengthy process, as we mentioned before, and we thank all of our community members who have been a part of it. Some of them we see here today. There were 4 steering committee meetings, 4 work sessions with our planning commission to get to this point. There were open houses. We worked with our young students in the 3rd grade who are now 4th graders, community surveys, and even met with some of our esteemed council members to work through the details of this code and map to make sure that we have just the right document and the right language for our community. So today, we are here to tell you about implementation and answer any last questions that you have about this document. So I'll turn it over to the rest of my team.
Okay. Well, thank you again for having me this evening. I think the most important thing here to understand is that, we feel like we're at the end of a process because we've been in this writing process of the rewrite of the code. But the reality is that we're at the beginning. But we can't get to the beginning if you don't adopt it. The beginning is allowing it to be used. The document is, I hope you've read it and looked through it. It is a vast improvement of your current regulations. It will be easier for residents to understand, easier for developers, business owners to use. And there's a lot of good stuff in this document. Very thoughtful approach by the city, and so the point here is the code is a living document. So rather than adopting a code and then only doing amendments when there's an emergency or there's a new land use, marijuana becomes a sudden use you have to now deal with, or dealing with ADUs or whatever the thing that can be the land use of the day, you will begin learning, the staff will begin learning about problems with the code right out of the gate. There's going to be new ways of approaching development, new ways of processing things, and the idea is that the staff will be monitoring that every day. And so the point here is that if there's something not perfect about this, you can amend it later. So I'm urging you to move forward with adoption of the code. It's very good. I'm not saying that because I wrote it. I'm saying it because I collaborated with your community and with your staff, and we identified lots of best practices, and the code really is well done. We had a great legal review all along the way. It's legal, we believe, so I think it's ready to be used and tested. So from my perspective, the things about the code that are so good is that one is user-friendly. It's just visually attractive. It's easy to read through and understand. A lot of the very long, verbose regulations in the existing code have been streamlined, and we have in there what needs to be in there. It's developer and business friendly, and so it'll be easier for projects to move forward, and it will help you, more importantly than anything, it will help you implement your comprehensive plan. Your comprehensive plan was just completed. It has some major aspirations for redevelopment, and this will allow you to get there. We've written the code to enable that vision to come true, and so I think it's ready. But that's
and if I could cut in, I know we, as our department, continue to have conversations with businesses and developers. I know as of today, we have 4 projects that are waiting for this code to be adopted because they like the regulations. It's on our website, they've seen it, and they would like to apply under the new code. So they are waiting to see, when they can apply. They're excited about it.
And if I could just add one more thing, just context is always, I think, important. As many of you may know, the code that you have today was modeled after Centerville. Well, my firm now has a contract with Centerville helping them rewrite their code. So they're moving on, and so you guys are really ahead of the curve. I think that context is important to know that regulations do kind of live their life, and then they have to be improved, and we're there. So you guys are ahead of the curve. Just wanted to offer that.
Oh, Josh, if you could go back.
Oh, sorry, Cody. I'm going too quick. There you go.
Thank you. So my piece of this is working on a transition plan to make sure that all of the input that we've received, that the team here has received from stakeholders, residents, council, planning commission, all of the stakeholders that have been involved in this is put forth and allows this new code to, once it's adopted by council, to be implemented as seamlessly as possible and to allow that to go forward and progress the work that the city of Riverside is doing. Within that, one of the biggest pieces of that is obviously how this impacts the residents. And in doing so, so as someone who works in this field, studies this, has worked in this field for a while, but is also new to the city of Riverside and new to this code, echoing what Todd said earlier, some of the language can be overly verbose, can be difficult to glean what actually needs to be done for residents when they come to us to apply for an accessory structure or they want to do something else in the city. This code cleans up a lot of that and makes it a lot easier to get that information and understand exactly what it is they need to do and how they need to approach the city to be successful in that. In addition, it does implement a new residential zoning district that better reflects the current built environment. For example, under the current code, the minimum lot frontage in our residential districts is 60 feet. We do have a lot of residences that only have 40 or 45 feet of road frontage, so this code is custom built and allows us to actually have a code that reflects the city of Riverside as it sits today. In terms of business owners, it allows for a lot more flexibility in development and in business development and retention. So for example, the area we're sitting in right now, under the new code, once it's hopefully adopted by council, will become the Springfield Innovation District, which allows us to take advantage of the unique characteristics of this area to market to businesses and take advantage of our closeness and proximity to Wright-Patterson and that defense sector. Lastly, I will mention that when we talk about having input from all of the stakeholders, all of the residents, the team here has worked to really make sure that is true, and one example of that is the third grade workshop that was started last year by the team, and definitely worked to get the input of younger residents and make sure that their voices were heard and allow their ideas and their thoughts and needs to be implemented into this new code and to take their wants and needs into account moving forward. We are working on that workshop again this year, and we'll focus on the theme for this year will be the fabric of Riverside and how this new code will really work to transform and work together with what Riverside is and how it is going to move forward.
So as far as next steps go, I think, again, we wanted to create another space for council to have any other conversation, make staff available if you have specific questions that we can help answer. I know we had some meetings offline as well, individually with some folks, but again, we are prepared, I think, on a staff level to bring you an ordinance and the zoning map for a first reading at the next council meeting. Like all other ordinances, they would require 2 reads. So we would do a first reading on February 2nd and then a second reading later that month.
I'm not. Sorry. I am currently working on some legislation as to the allowance of chickens, which was the majority of residents wanted in all these workshops and everything. Once I get that done, I will email it after my conversation with Josh. I will email that to all of council so that you guys just have an idea of my thought process of allowing the chickens. I mean, and I'm working on like the safety issues of it. I mean, everything. And giving like my basically envision of it for everybody to eventually put their input in on how they feel about it. Having said that, I have another issue. I was looking over this Roar Boulevard situation, the map. I know we've had discussions in the past, specifically I had with both the mayor and Josh. I understand progress, as I explained previously. Of course, most of us really don't like it, but I get it. It brings in revenue, that's needed. However, I was a little thrown off once I got the actual complete maps. Because first of all, our whole park is included in it, and you all know how steadfast I am about, that's the only thing my neighborhood has for kids. We are very low income. We are high density, as you guys are wanting to change it to, so we're compacted in there like chickens, speaking of chickens. And there are so many families that have to work, and this is the only form of entertainment these children have other than sitting behind a video game, if their parents can afford even that. So I was very disappointed to see that Roar Park as a whole was in this recoding. As far as around Roar Park, I even have some issues with some of the things that are allowed. For example, permitted uses, a hotel or motel. I tell you what, we won't say how I feel about that, because that hit a nerve in me like no tomorrow, to put a hotel or a motel right there by where children play in that park. Another thing would be pet boarding and animal daycare. We already have an issue with, and I mean, that's basically all of Riverside, with people complaining about, dogs running loose. Okay, that doesn't apply to the kennels and daycare, but your barking dogs. So I could tell you now, a daycare or a kennel going in there is going to set off all Valley Platte with everybody's dogs all the time. I don't see as that should be an acceptable item for there. A hospital, that one took me aback. Another thing I don't think should be going by a park where kids play. And we're not right in the middle of a high residential density area. And that's not, funeral home, mortuary, same thing. Now, these are permitted uses, which means if this zoning goes through and a company already has interest and comes in and says, I want to put this there, unless they're doing something that doesn't apply with the rest of that code, they're in. That does not make me happy at all, I mean, there again, in a high-density area with families, and I could go on with the permitted with special standards. Car washes, microbreweries, micro distillery, automotive services, automotive sales, a residential facility. And then there's the conditional use, which does get a little more stricter as to what has to, be done. But that's another private dog kennel. Outdoor storage. A parking facility. Again, a hotel, but now extended stay. Commercial kennel. I don't see how that is doing my part of town any good. If you guys want to come in and, like I envisioned, again, if you're going to develop that area, convenience store, kids from the park, parents sitting over there, goes over there, gets some candy, gets some drink. Somebody wants milk, they're out, don't want to run all the way to Kroger, run over there and get a gallon of milk. Your single-family homes. I'm not even against your multi-dwellings, and again, this is my neighborhood, guys, okay? I'm not even against multiple dwellings. But I saw this more as, there are parts in there about recreation, outdoor, indoor recreation. I'm all for that over there. We don't have that in Riverside much for kids or families. But to be opening it up to hotels, motels, pet boarding, hospitals, all this other, I'm going to tell you now, I cannot be one that would pass this based on that. That's all I have to say.
I actually do have some completely separate concerns about the personal use of property in the code. That is a area that I'm passionate about because it affects all of us day to day. As I'm reading through the personal use of property sections of the code, I see the term aesthetic often used as a reason for regulation. Riverside does not have an obvious architectural or natural structures or landmarks that create an obvious citywide aesthetic. As such, aesthetics for us is a matter of opinion and varies from person to person. So I think any restrictions placed on personal use of property specifically should be based out of health and safety reasons, not based on opinions of some people. One of those areas in particular is fences, specifically for front yards. Section 110510 C and D of the draft code says solid board, chain link, wire mesh, et cetera, are not permitted in front yards basically unless 60% of the existing lots have a non-conforming fence, and then all fences need to match. What's the reason other than purely aesthetics based for that regulation to be based on? And then corner lots, any approved fence or landscaping cannot be over 3 feet tall within the 30-foot clear sight triangle. Mesh and wire fencing that is properly maintained does not create a visibility hazard within that clear sight triangle. And some of our homes don't even clear the 30-foot triangle themselves. Like our houses themselves are blocking that 30-foot triangle, so I'm not sure where that comes from. The revised definitions for front, side, and rear yards, if you go to Google Maps and do an aerial view of Riverside overall, there are a lot of homes that do not fall within those 3 categories. So I'm wondering how that specifically affects regulations that, for items that are only allowed in backyards, if the house does not have a backyard based on the new regulations. Are there extra steps that those people have to go through to qualify for those amenities in their property? I also had questions about the ROAR redistricting. I was wondering how exactly that would affect the park or potentially affect it. Could the park size be decreased? What is the actual potential effect on the park itself? And then kind of piggybacking on the chickens thing, with the current financial hardships and overall financial climate, anything that we can do to decrease food insecurity and increase self-sufficiency, we should be doing. Allowing as many people as possible to raise and consume their own food products is common sense. It can't be a bad thing. And then I think we need to make sure that we're not preventing people from processing their own legally acquired wild game or whatnot for their own personal consumption on their property as well. Those are my concerns with the code currently.
What would the process be of modifying any parts of the code if we so choose?
So there are really 2 approaches we can take at this juncture. One is one approach is to sort of take some of these questions, concerns, and sort of chunk it out, and we can have additional work session, discussion items at future meetings to try to work through some of these issues. I would suggest that it usually, for the purposes of having a productive conversation during a meeting like this, it helps if we have a conversation one-on-one with folks to kind of get really to the meat of what is a proposal so that we can prepare something to get it in front of council to talk about, so that we're all prepared for that conversation for the meeting. And then at that point, if council has language, or if somebody wants to say, you know, I would like this language to be included, someone can make a motion to amend the land use code, the UDO, and incorporate that revised language. So that's sort of one approach. The other approach is, and I guess the approach that I would recommend is if these issues are complex, meaty, if there's going to need to be a lot of discussion and a lot of detail about it, my recommendation would be to adopt the land use code as proposed, but then immediately schedule discussion item, work session periods of time where we can workshop those kinds of issues. Hold on one second. With the idea that then we have to follow the process for amending the code, which involves asking the Planning Commission for a recommendation. The distinction being, in the past, when we've asked Planning Commission for a recommendation, we've asked Planning Commission to come up with the language. You don't have to do that. Council can develop the language, have the language in hand, ask Planning Commission to make a recommendation, and then do whatever council wants to do with that recommendation. So it would be a way of sort of workshopping what are the proposed adjustments and then running those proposals through the process.
But the process, may I add, can take, per our conversation, 2 to 3 months?
It depends on how much council wants to talk about it, right? So I think the idea is that we would create the space to have that conversation, and however long council needs to come to a consensus about what recommended or proposed language should look like, then we would hash all that out and then then send it to planning commission.
So my concern on that would be then these companies that we have waiting already step in, start taking over parts of a park that I don't want by my park, like a hospital stuff.
Sure.
And we're already past the gate. That's the reason I want this, my personal feeling is I need this fixed before this is approved. I mean, like I said, I cannot vote yes on this as long as it's standing with that in there.
Frida, I'm just going to say this, and I'm not saying I don't disagree with what you're saying. You got to take the personal effects out of it, though. We have to look at the big picture of the citizens
But that's
of
only
Riverside,
that
too.
section. That's why I'm saying they're not doing it to any
But
other.
but I understand you, I keep hearing you say personal. This is my personal feelings. I just want to make sure that you're thinking of
Well,
everybody.
so I'm not speaking on council. This is my personal feelings. Now,
Okay.
my park, yes, but there again.
I just
we
don't know,
have-
is this
Well,
the
it's your
feelings?
opinion as a council member.
Yes.
Yes,
and-
and
but
is
just
this the
like the
is
old
this
U-Haul.
feeling of your community of?
I can tell you that.
That's
there-
what I'm trying to say.
Because, I mean, this is no different than the U-Haul before. What's good in my neighborhood's not good in that neighborhood. I mean, it falls back to that. The other parks, I don't even like the way the other parks are coded now that I've actually looked at it, because they're CI. So basically, right now, any of our parks can be done that way. Schellenberger, somebody can decide that they want part of it and come in, and they can build businesses. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. I was not till I dug into this hard. I've even went as far as checking what other cities do. Some actually have it listed as parks and recreation. So that way, there is not the industrial or business use where it can't be developed for anything. So, I mean, that's my thing is, I'm not happy, honestly, about all the parks, but that's already done. I mean, that's not changing. The only one that's changing is Roar Park from the CI like all the others into this development idea.
So what I would offer is, I want to make sure that we don't make perfect the enemy of the good. And, what we're looking at is, in many ways, a drastic improvement to what we already have, but also bearing in mind that it is our right and our responsibility to look at what we are potentially adopting. I would propose that we give ourselves some time to work through some of these issues, but maybe not drag it out. So, get through what we can get through in a small chunk of time, take the win, and then continue to working the plan. As the gentleman said, it's a living document, we keep working at it, and I'm personally interested in what that process looks like to continue modifying it, because cities are, living organisms. We grow, we change, and our code needs to be able to adapt to the changing conditions, and I would be interested in working through that process as well.
So then if I'm going to distill some of this, what I would offer is that it sounds like we need at least one more discussion session, and maybe what we'll do is come up with a little mini agenda based on some of the items and concerns that were raised here today. I do think it would be helpful if it would be helpful for the staff in order to equip council for that conversation if we did a little bit of homework to figure out sort of what the parameters of that are, and maybe kind of try to draft through at a very high level, what are sort of the end goals that you have in mind that you'd like to walk away with? And then we can develop some things that we could actually put in front of council to start talking about. So here are sort of the rough framework about if you wanted to make a motion to amend, it would look roughly like this. And that would be the goal of the next discussion workshop, for lack of a better term, is we can start to have that conversation, and then, to Councilmember Fry's point, just see where the conversation takes us, and then we take the next step. The only other thing I would offer is that we do have a moratorium in place that prevents certain uses from going forward under the current code. And we are on something of a deadline with respect to that moratorium because you can't continue to extend those forever and ever. So to your point, Councilmember Patterson, I think that we are kind of in a situation where there are things that can happen on both ends of this process, either because we have to let our moratorium lapse without a new code, and then a lot of developments that people might not like may happen all over the city.
Because
or-
we have a code that's outdated.
Correct. And we will have to honor the old code until a new code comes into
Correct.
play. And/or you create a situation where new developments could come in under a new code by right. So that is a tension point. And that's just kind of the reality of where we are with respect to the development environment. We can do our best to navigate that. We have a window of time to do that. And I think what I'll do is definitely slate this for discussion item at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
because, I mean, there are other little things that, I mean, to me, could be things that could be discussed and amended, down the line, whenever. But, I mean, these are hot points for me,
That's fair.
so.
I do want to clarify that I do see improvements in the code. There's a lot of things moving in the right direction in
Yes.
there. It's not like I don't like the whole thing. It's specific things that stuck out, but I do see that it's moving in the right direction.
Yes.
And I will say a lot of the uses that are put in that table are from community feedback. So I'll speak to the hospitals. That's something that came out a lot in the third grade workshop, is they want to see more hospitals or more medical uses in the community.
I could see doctor offices there. I don't know. I'm not big on slapping a hospital in the middle of our city anywhere. I mean, I'm gonna be honest.
But it
You
could
know.
be a medical facility. I think that hospitals is included in the permitted, it's included in the spectrum of definitions that we might call a type of medical facility. Doesn't mean it's gonna be Miami Valley Hospital.
But there again, with the way it's worded, if a hospital says, you know what, we want to build one here, we're screwed. I mean, you can't fight that.
It would still be confined to the size of a lot and other zoning. It's not like other zoning restrictions or other conditions that have to be met go away all of a sudden.
Right,
As you
I
say-
said as long as it's within the code still.
Correct, so I-
But I don't even like that as an option, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Even though it may not ever happen.
I understand that, I understand
It's
that.
an option.
I understand that. But I'm just saying that there's a number of other safeguards that would pop up before somebody could put something in and say, but it's a hospital. You can't, it's not as simple as, it wouldn't happen just like that. But I also appreciate your concern, and I don't want to diminish it because,
Right.
I mean, you're talking about hotels, there's a microtel next to a high school.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and
Two
I
high
mean,
schools have microtels across from them.
and if you look at our parks, other than community, which technically isn't ours, that's,
Yeah, it's-
that's right, Pat's.
The
with-
deed is held by someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a deed restriction on Shellebarger, so it couldn't be developed anyway.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying, though. What is around the other parks besides community? And part of community is, it's residential. So it's not these big corporations and funeral homes and morgues and hotels, and that's what took me aback. Because, I mean, I'm back to the conformity, what's good in one neighborhood's good in another. Schellenberger's not like that, the one over off Penn's not like that.
Trenton.
Yes.
Yes, surrounded by houses.
Yes, so we're taking Roar Park into a whole nother dimension. And I don't see why. Like I said, I don't have a problem with developing back in there. Around the park, more eyes on the park, makes our kids safer. I mean, I see nothing wrong with that. And being low income and middle income neighborhood, you have a lot of people that don't have cars, they don't drive, or they're elderly, so someplace that they can walk to get necessities. The farmer's market, all for it. Little grocery store, all for it. So I'm not saying I don't want it developed. I'm saying that there should be limitations as to what we are dropping in the middle of a high-density residential zone.
So let's have that discussion.
Yes, please, please.
That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Other items, always brief, other items.
Super brief today because I don't have any.
Oh.
So-
Yay!
You did that just to get us excited so you got an easy
That's right.
win.
Occasionally, you got to keep people on their toes, I guess.
Only second meeting of the year, look at you. All right, we do have an executive session on the agenda. Before we go into that, though, we will go around the horn for council member discussion or comments. If anyone has anything they'd like to announce or add or comment on.
I think I've said enough and taken up enough time. I'll pass.
I also want to thank the city workers that have put in all the time into these presentations and whatnot. I don't want to take away from that effort at all. They're very informative, they've been helpful, and I appreciate all the time and effort you've put into that.
Thank you, staff, for that work and the continued work as the weather turns very, very cold. I see a lot of them out working and making sure that our streets are in good shape, and I know it's not an easy task. So thank you very much to our service department. Thank you, Mrs. Moore, and your staff for all the work they've done so far this winter, and hopefully not too far until the groundhog doesn't see a shadow or sees a shadow, whichever one is better. But thank you. Mr. Maxfield.
I think I've already said thank you to the staff. I didn't say thank you to this team over here for the work on the UDO. I know it was a lot of work to put all that in place. Thank you to the community members that have been speaking over the past several weeks. I understand a lot of you don't feel like we listen. We do listen. Just a lot of times we can't. We don't comment, we don't say much, but we do listen, we do hear. Just understand that. And I always do encourage you to contact us, communicate with us. I know some I stand next to at football games, some I see out in the community. A lot of times you don't typically bring much up to me, so you're always welcome to bring things up to me. So feel free to do that.
Ms. Fry?
All right. So Monday, we have our next community blood drive. It is, as per usual, the Bloodmobile is going to be in the parking lot from 3 to 6. We have a lot of open spots, and this does help the regional blood supply. So when people get into car accidents or need surgery, that there is a reliable, safe blood supply to support the community. So I encourage anyone who is available on Monday to participate. The way to register is going to donortime.com and searching for the City of Riverside. And as always, I really appreciate the community support for this endeavor.
Mr. Gaby?
I just want to say thanks to Beth and Michaela for all the work you guys have put into this, because I know it's been very time-consuming, and you've put up with a lot of grief from a lot of us residents in Riverside. Just want to thank you for all your work. And same over here. Thank you very much. And one last thing, just everybody look out for your neighbors, especially your elderly neighbors with this extreme cold, and make sure everybody's safe.
Absolutely.
Do we need a motion?
We need a motion to go into exec.
Motion to go into executive session.
And a second.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Maxfield, a second from Ms. Fry. Got to be quick on the draw there, Steve. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Gaby?
Yes.
Ms. Angel Patterson?
Yes.
Ms. Frida Patterson?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes, we are in exec at 8:07 PM. Thank you.